Welcome back, Smash fans, to the final and most important top 5 list I have planned for the end of spring. This is going to be taking a look at potential other Nintendo-owned characters who could get included in Smash Ultimate as DLC after our Mystery Arms fighter. Because I'm beginning to have a feeling we're going to get more than one. In fact, I actually think the majority of the second Fighter's Pass is going to be first party. Again, at least we get half first parties in Volume 2. But who exactly could we see after ARMS? Well, that's exactly what we're here to discuss. So let's not bullshit around anymore and dive right into today's list. Coming in at number 5 for our potential next Nintendo character for DLC is none other than Dixie Kong from Donkey Kong Country. She's been a staple in their franchise for decades now. She became a protagonist in Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, helping Diddy in rescuing DK from the Kremlings. She's also was the main antagonist in Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. And lastly of all, unlike King K. Rool, she's been used a lot since Rare left for Microsoft. And the Donkey Kong series has been worked on by a bunch of different developers since then, and she's pretty much never been dropped as a character. She's been kept on by the developers ever since Rare left, and she's been continuously used in the series. So it really is the only glaring omission when it comes to Donkey Kong characters on the Smash roster. Among the countless message boards and forum sites, Dixie Kong has always remained a very popular request within the Smash community. And despite the fact that she's one of the many collectible spirits in the base game, I have a feeling, since a lot of popular first-party omissions are spirits in Ultimate already, I have a feeling we could see a couple upgrades in this regard, because they would be spirit upgrades of characters that Nintendo actually owns themselves. Bit of a spoiler alert here, most of the characters on this list have been included as spirits since the launch of the base game. So I just thought I'd get that out of the way right here, right now. But anyways, does Dixie have enough that would separate her from Diddy Kong that could make her stand out and justify her inclusion? Let's take a look, shall we? You know, she's got her hair that can be a reliable weapon for much of her regular A attacks, and that would make her different enough, right? But what about those sweet, sweet, sweet special moves? Well, let's start off with neutral special for Dixie, which could be her Bubblegum Pop Gun, which was featured in Tropical Freeze, might I add. This move would be the most similar to Diddy, and it would function very similar to Diddy's Peanut Pop Gun. Charge the shot to make it bounce further along, but if you hold it too long, that gum's gonna pop all over you. Next, we have Side Special, which could be Barrel Blast. You can charge this attack, and Dixie will blast forward on her Bongo Jet. This rocket-style attack would charge and function a lot like another launch-forward attack, say a la Luigi or Pikachu. And much like with them, if you are far off stage, it can be used as an option for extra recovery. Now we cover her last two potential special moves, starting with Up Special, which would definitely be the Ponytail Twirl. This move is perhaps Dixie Kong's biggest trademark move. Dixie leaps into the air, and her ponytail starts spinning around like a propeller, and it lifts her off the ground and into the air. You can float in the air after it's performed too, kind of like Peach, for example. Those who get caught in the twirling ponytail will also take small amounts of damage while the animation is active. And lastly, we have Down Special, which could be Bubblegum Trap. Dixie would blow a large bubble from her bubblegum. If an enemy makes contact with it, the bubble will burst, causing some knockback. If the bubble fully grows and bursts on its own, the bursted gum will set down a sticky trap on the ground, causing those who run in it to become stunned briefly, allowing you to take advantage of the trap and punish accordingly. So maybe minus one special move that's kind of similar to Diddy's, she has a lot to offer from Diddy Kong, in my opinion. Her gum and hair gimmicks would make for a very suitable fighter. She's a very popular request by the Smash community, and most importantly of all, she's owned by Nintendo themselves. The thing is I don't really know if they're intending on giving the Donkey Kong series another fighter after K. Rool's inclusion as a newcomer in the base roster. But she is perhaps the biggest glaring omission from that franchise who is currently not playable on the roster. And yeah, I believe she deserves it more than Funky Kong does. Sorry to disappoint all you Funky fans out there. Coming in at number 4 for our next potential Nintendo-owned DLC character is Bandana Dee from the Kirby series. He remains the only main recurring character from the Kirby franchise who is not represented as a playable character on the Smash roster. Meta Knight, King Dedede, and Kirby, of course, are all on the roster already, and the fact that Bandana Dee is not is kinda weird. He's always been a decently popular request, and by that I mean he's done well on a variety of fan polls over the years. Originally a Dedede henchman sent off to antagonize Kirby, Bandana Dee too evolved over time to be an ally of Kirby's over the years, which is still pretty much the role he has to this day. But how would his potential special moves look? Well, let's analyze that, shall we? Well, first off, he wields a spear, which is a weapon type that is not really realized at all yet in Smash Bros. So that, to me, already makes him stand out a bit, to use a weapon that no other character has a moveset structured around. So, to start off with his neutral special, it could be the Megaton Punch. This move is from Kirby Superstar, where Bandana Dee and the other fighters, or Kirby characters in the game, glow as they charge a super punch into the ground. When delivered at full charge, it would create shockwaves that drift and stun opponents from afar. Side special for Bandana Dee could be his most iconic attack, and should be the Spear Throw. As you hold side special, you can throw between 1 and 3 spears at a time. Now we discuss his final 2 potential special moves, starting with his up special, which could be the Spear Copter. Pretty much an identical recovery to the previously mentioned Dixie Kong, except Bandana Dee would use his spear to twirl above his head rather than using a ponytail. But it would function pretty well in the exact same way. Foes that get caught in the animation while it's active will take damage. You can control and float around while in the midst of it as well. You know, that whole deal. Lastly, Bandana Dee's potential down special could be Moondrop. Leaping up into the air with his spear, Bandana Dee comes crashing down with a spear thrust directed at the ground on his way down in the fall towards an opponent. It would function similarly to Yoshi's down special, or also look similarly to Link's down aerial. If you want to fuse those 2 moves together for a better mental picture, that is what the down special would function like. He wouldn't at all inhale like Kirby or Dedede do. He mainly fights with a spear, and as I said earlier, that is a weapon that's not used by any other fighter as a base for a kit on the roster yet. He has a distinct look that most fans of Kirby remember, and he would give Kirby an important ally against his 2 rivals that are already included in Ultimate. He's still a popular request, and as I said about Dixie Kong earlier, he's the one lone main series recurring Kirby character that is not included as a playable fighter in Smash Bros. But with that being said, I believe there are a few more likely first-party candidates that do trump him and Dixie when it comes to overall likelihood. Coming in at number 3 for our potential next Nintendo-owned DLC character is Paper Mario, from the self-titled series of RPG games that star this flat design style Mario who has appeared over the years since the Nintendo 64. And yes, a bit of my reason for including him on this list is because there is a new Paper Mario game set to release next month. Paper Mario, the Origami King, is set to release on July 17th this summer. And I am well aware that just because a new game is coming out doesn't equal said character's inclusion in Smash. But I think this will kill a few birds with one stone. The inclusion of Paper Mario would promote the Origami King, but also manage to be the sole representation for Mario RPGs. Basically, he would fill the role that many Smash fans, myself included, wanted Geno to be included for. But unlike Geno, and much to Paper Mario's credit, he's fully owned by Nintendo themselves. He has been a protagonist of what's going on to be the 6th Paper Mario game over the last few years and generations. And also the fact that he has a new game coming out in July, it's simply just the icing on said cake. Despite the fact that Mario and Dr. Mario are on this roster, Paper Mario is 2D and flat and even more cartoony looking than the OG Marios, so his mechanics would naturally have to be completely different from the other 2 Marios that are already on the roster. And let's not forget that this roster already has 3 Links who are not very different from each other anyway, so at least Paper Mario would be much different from Mario and Doc, you know, from a visual standpoint, and the fact that he's like completely, his render is illustration-esque and in that type of style. How would his special moves fare, though, based on just his render and appearance? Well, we're going to take a look at that. Let's start off with neutral special, and I don't think there's any move more appropriate for this spot than Paper Mario's trademark hammer. Whack all opponents in front of you by pressing the B button. Then we're going to move on to his side special, which could be a simple spin attack. Paper Mario would spin across the stage in a twirl motion, damaging anybody who gets in his path. Now let's tackle his last two special moves, starting with up special, which could be spring jump. Paper Mario would fold himself and scrunch up like a piece of paper and launch into the air. Perhaps he could drift like a piece of paper all the way down. And lastly, we have his potential down special, which could be the spin jump. It's another jump special like Yoshi's, where Paper Mario, upon inputting the move, would leap up and come crashing ass downward on his foes like a cannonball. We could always incorporate different ways to utilize his trusty hammer throughout much more of his moveset, and I'm sure Sakurai and the developers would do that if he was in fact included as DLC. Again, the fact that Paper Mario has a new game coming out only slightly helps his cause for inclusion in Smash, but I think it might be taken into consideration, and the fact that he would be the definitive representative of all Mario RPG games on the whole seemingly justifies his inclusion as DLC. He has a distinct design, would feature a moveset completely different to the actual Mario who's already in the game, and yet I still have two more first-party spots I find to be even more likely than he is. Coming in at number 2 for our next potential Nintendo DLC character is Rilla Boom. But let me clarify that this spot is reserved for a new Sword and Shield rep on the whole, and that Rilla Boom is just my personal choice. I think this is nearly a lock to happen at some point, and at the least, if it ain't a lock, it's extremely likely. So let's take a look at what Rilla Boom could bring to the table in terms of moveset potential. Every Pokemon that has been included in Smash Bros., with the one and only exception of Pichu, have always been made super unique and have brought something completely new and their own flair and fighting style to the game within their inclusion. So when a new Pokemon is included, it's always about their uniqueness from a moveset standpoint. And Rilla Boom attacks with drums. Using rhythm and music as an attack would be something completely new for a DLC fighter, and it's also the type of thing that Sakurai likes to realize and completely make his own. So let's take a look at the potential special moves for Rilla Boom. Starting with neutral special, which is the most obvious one of all, and that is drum beating. Tap this button repeatedly to drum up a storm. The music you will produce from said drumming will cause vines to sprout from the ground and flail wildly the more you drum. Then, side special could be knockoff. Pointing his drumstick forward, Rilla Boom will summon a large hand-shaped projectile forward, and it will slap the ground hard, creating a big hurt box that will catch your foes and knock them back. Also, when the drum is out, using this move will slide the drum forward a bit and kind of reposition it. Now we will discuss his final two potential special moves, starting with up special, which could be Wood Hammer. This move is certainly dependent on having your drum by your side. Rilla Boom will pound on the drum, causing a spring effect which sends him up into the air for a recovery. Having the drum will make you recover much higher than without it. Without it you still can recover, but your height will be very much decreased. And lastly, we have down special, which is perhaps the most essential move for the entire kit of Rilla Boom, and that is drum setup. Rilla Boom will decide where is most appropriate, and when you decide, as Rilla Boom, on stage where you want to set up your drum kit, perform downbeat to place the drums where you want them, and proceed to use it for your special moves. And it's out and ready for a concert. So again, everybody, I chose Rilla Boom in particular because most of the time, it's popular starters who get chosen for this kind of roster inclusion. But he does have some competition in that department from Cinderace and Inteleon. But I think compared to both of them, he has a moveset I find to be the most interesting of the three for my tastes. Inteleon would be a sniper who would be all about well-timed and well-placed projectile use, and Cinderace is a fighting-style Pokemon who performs flashy punches and kicks. While this would be easy to implement compared to the other two if you're going to go with Cinderace, I don't think it's nearly as compelling. To me, Rilla Boom's drum-based attacks is a function that would be so very cool to see implemented in Smash Bros., and that's why he's my personal choice for this Sword and Shield potential roster spot. Before we move on from Sword and Shield entirely, my collaborator, Gabe Nozid, brought up Urshifu as the Pokemon he believes has the most chance to be included as the Sword and Shield rep. He's a new legendary that has been promoted heavily by Nintendo since first being shown off at that Pokemon Direct back in January. And we don't have another legendary on the roster aside from Mewtwo. But honestly, I think Nintendo is prone to feature a starter Pokemon that was available right from the start in Sword and Shield, and not a legendary that was included via a future update to the game. But who really does know? The amount of promotion Urshifu has gotten recently has been about eyebrow-raising to say the least. But we have one last spot to talk about, and the fact that an ARMS inclusion is confirmed to be happening is the reason I think this game is going to get some DLC representation during Fighters Pass Volume 2. And no, I'm not meaning Pokemon Sword and Shield. Coming in at number 1 for our next potential Nintendo DLC character is, and drum roll, ironically not Rilla Boom for number 1 with this drum roll, Rex and Pyra as a duo tag team style character from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Perhaps the first party inclusion that has new hope behind them after this ARMS announcement was made. That being the inclusion of this fan favorite pair from the 2017 Nintendo Switch exclusive. After being shoved aside for Byleth and Fire Emblem, Rex found himself being relegated to a mere Mii Sword Fighter DLC costume, and many thought Xenoblade Chronicles 2 would be completely snubbed for playable inclusion on this roster. Then, we got the announcement of a second Fighters Pass, as well as the future inclusion of an ARMS fighter. And since this is the most popular ARMS characters that are considered are already included as spirits in the base game, this has brought hope that spirits can be upgraded throughout this second pass. As a duo spirit, Rex and Pyra do not exist together in Ultimate, either, might I add. They themselves, as Rex and Pyra individually, are included as spirits, but not as a team spirit where the two are side by side. And since the tag team mechanic is the reason why I and many others want them in this game, let's take a bit of a closer look at how they could work and function. Rex and Pyra start off at the beginning of the game by accidentally becoming tied together. Rex takes a job that nearly kills him, and Pyra, witnessing it, saves his life. The two become intertwined as driver and blade. Rex the driver is given some power from Pyra the blade, and a blade, for those of you who don't know, is a legendary AI-esque living weapon, like a person, like artificial intelligence type humanoid being that is a living, breathing, I don't know about breathing, but a living weapon. So now that the two are together, they now go on a big adventure. In the game, Rex does all the combat while Pyra provides support, allowing Rex to perform special attacks, and then she steps into action herself for combos and other chain attacks. Both of them are tied together through an energy called affinity, and they can feel each other's pain. So, much like Nana for Ice Climbers and Luma for Rosalina, Pyra would be tied to Rex and be controlled via AI. The two will stick together and she'll be able to gradually buff Rex's attacks. A big shout out to Dezelthin for this next portion. I'm giving him total credit here for helping me explain to the best of my ability how their affinity gimmick could work. Basically, you'd build up your affinity by battling, and when you buff it enough, it will provide you with much stronger attacks. But be warned, if you shall get knocked out, then you'll need to start building up the team's affinity all over again. Much like when you use it all up with the buffed attacks that you build up over time. It will drain with every usage. So, it's a resource. You got to build it back up again, much like any other gimmick gauge that is in Ultimate. Let's discuss some potential special moves, shall we? Starting with Neutral Special, which could and should be Anchor Shot, perhaps one of the most well-known attack animations from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Rex shoots out a grappling hook-type weapon at his foes, which locks them in place for him to follow up with a slash of his sword. When at absolute full affinity, the hook will snare to your opponent and automatically bring them to you without you having to press B again for a follow-up, as you would have to do when you have less affinity. Next, let's take a look at the duo's potential side special, which could be Rolling Smash. It's a strong sword strike Rex performs by leaping forward, which helps him evade other attacks at ground level. The more affinity you have, then the more distance you clear and range you will have while performing this side special. Now we cover the duo's final potential 2 special moves, starting with up special, which could and should be Spinning Edge. Now, in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, this move is a multi-hit sword slash. So, most of us have kind of put this move in the up special position, and like many other people have done in speculation forums and all that, we're going to tweak it into a recovery. So, as Rex performs the spinning slash, it will lift him into the air for recovery. Me and... oh gosh, I can't believe this, but me and my first party helicopter twirly-like recoveries. How many have we had so far in this video? Like 3? Anyway, geez, moving on. Once again, your affinity is important to this up special. The higher your affinity is, the less vulnerable this recovery option becomes. And lastly, we have the duo's down special, which should be the Blade special, which gives Pyra some work she can provide via a special move designed for her. This is also something that Dezelthin pointed out in his video, which I will link in the description. In Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Blade specials are the moves that Blades, such as Pyra, can learn and use as you level up and progress throughout the game. So, when you input down B, Rex will pass his sword to Pyra, who will perform one of 3 different Blade specials based on your level of affinity at the time you pull off the move. And believe me, there are many Blade specials they could choose from for levels 1 through 3. So I'll leave those to your imagination. So yeah, when it comes to potential first-party inclusions after ARMS, I think Rex and Pyra have the best potential in terms of overall relevance and the fact that they bring a lot of new to the table, including that they are a tag team archetype duo, which we do not have many characters like that in Ultimate at the moment. And in fact, they would bring a level of dynamic play to that archetype style by the use of affinity as a new in-battle gimmick. They're first party, they're from a relatively recent Switch exclusive, and there is so much that can be taken from their game of origin that would separate them so very much from the rest of the cast. Perhaps a new Pokemon is arguably a little more likely depending on your point of view, but to me, Sakurai cares most about how an inclusion on the roster is going to play. And to me, Rex and Pyra have that very potential in spades. So now I throw the following questions to you guys. Do you agree with the first-party characters I listed in this video? If I missed somebody you think that should have been mentioned, name them and rate their chances in a comment. Also, did you have a favorite character from this video at all? And lastly, the final question for all of you. Who from this list do you find the most likely for inclusion out of the whole bunch? Whether you like the characters or not, who do you find the absolute most likely? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section below. And now we begin the cheapest of plugs. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed that time of the video again. As you can see by the lovely little graphic in front of you, this is a list to all of my social media and gaming presences. So please add me and follow me on those platforms to stay as up to date as you possibly can with all of my content going forward. And for those of you who are new to the channel and enjoyed what you have seen and heard, please click on that lovely little subscribe button, and thank you all so very much for watching.